Learning leadership through problem-based learning or PBL is far more effective than simply listening to the storytelling of the leaders. The storytelling, on the other hand, is far better than just reading the history books on leaders. The storytelling teaches the value of self-knowledge and reflection and enables us to examine our life, reflect on our successes and failures, and tune in to the music of our own stories. We can look to experience in our lives for wisdom and guidance. Professor Warren G. Bennis, founding chairman of the Leadership Institute, University of Southern California, wrote in his book on becoming a leader. Leaders learn by leading, and they learn best by leading in the face of obstacles. As weather shapes mountains, problems shape leaders. Bennis' statement addresses the two most crucial points. First, as leaders, we should learn actively and independently by doing, not by solely reading or listening to others passively. Reading is good, but it defeats the purpose if we could not apply the lessons we read. Listening is also good, but it will also defeat the purpose if we only listen to judge, not to learn. This first part of Professor Bennis' statement pointed towards the learning process and approach, the self-directed learning. Second, the best way to learn is to face problems. There is no specific syllabus or learning content for leaders to learn except facing the problems. Hence, problems are the syllabus and the content. Based on this second point, we could understand clearly that to learn Dr. Mahathir's leadership skills is to learn how he had faced the problems during his leadership journey. May 13, 1969 racial riots is certainly the first major leadership problem faced by Dr. Mahathir. His memoir, In a Doctor in the House, is a valuable source for problem-based leadership learning. Apart from picking up some historical facts and stories from his leadership learning experience, we could also emulate and simulate his encounter of the problem and proceed with our problem-based learning exploration. Leaders as well as students at all levels could most possibly gain new leadership insights and experience by learning through the problem trigger related to the May 13 racial riots. The extract in pages 197 to 198 of A Doctor in the House indicates Dr. Mahathir's consciousness upon the problem scenario he is facing before and after the 1969 general election. It is a real-world leadership problem, but too straightforward, not ill-structured and complex enough for the learners to start the problem-based leadership learning. The main purpose of the learning is to understand the essential leadership skills one should have in dealing with the crisis. A proper PBL sessions may take a long process of learning from the diagnostic process, self-directed learning and reflective learning. For the first learning simulation in this book, I have redesigned the problem scenario from the extract so that it could become ill-structured and complex enough for us to start the problem-based leadership learning. This is the problem scenario. The Alliance won the 1969 general election with a reduced number of seats, both at federal and state levels. The opposition parties were jubilant and wanted to celebrate on the streets of Kuala Lumpur. The police gave them permission, but they ignored the designated routes and deliberately headed towards the old Malay settlement of Kampung Baru. The non-Malay crowd made rude remarks and gestures. The next day, May 13, the Kuala Lumpur's fateful racial riots ensued. This problem scenario could direct us to achieve these learning outcomes. 1. To identify the effect of the unwise decision by the government to allow the celebration without considering the existing racial tensions. 2. To explore the failures of leadership in dealing with the racial conflicts in pre- and post-May 13, 1969. 3. To evaluate the racial discrimination situation in pre- and post-May 13, 1969. 4. to identify the contributing factors of the Chinese dissatisfaction over the Malays' indigenous status quo, and 5. To explore the Malays' unthoughtful and emotional response over their status and language. In PBL, learning starts as soon as the learners encounter the problem scenario presented by the teacher. Working in a group, the learners should first understand the problem. This phase is called problem identification or diagnostic or inquiry process. One of the many diagnostic approaches in problem-based learning is called FILA or FACTILA, the approach often used in medical studies. FILA approach consists of facts, ideas, learning issues, and action plan. Whereas FACTILA approach is the extension of FILA with one additional step called terms. In this simulation, we are going to use FACTILA approach. Step 1, identify the facts from the problem. Step 2, identify the terms and conduct the cross-reference. Step 3, generate ideas from the facts. Step 4, generate learning issues. Step 5, plan for self-directed learning or action plan. Step 1, identify the facts from the problem. The first step is to identify the facts from the problem. The most convenient way to identify the fact is to divide the problem into manageable and easy to understand statements or particulars from the problem scenario. Based on the above problem trigger, we could examine and explore the problem through the diagnostic process of FACTILA. First, the problem should be separated into manageable parts. This problem trigger contains 5 main parts as listed below. In problem diagnostic, these parts represent the facts of the problem. 1. The Alliance won the 1969 general election with a reduced number of seats both at federal and state levels. 2. The supporters of the opposition were jubilant and wanted to celebrate on the streets of Kuala Lumpur. 3. The police permitted them, but they ignored the designated routes and deliberately headed towards the old Malay settlement of Kampung Baru. 4. The non-Malay crowd made rude remarks and gestures. And 5. The next day, May 13, the Kuala Lumpur's fateful racial riots ensued. Step 2. Identify the terms and conduct the cross-reference. The second step is to identify terms, including important terminologies, abbreviation, unit phrases, proper names, or any strange or difficult to understand words. Based on the above problem trigger, 11 terms had been identified. 1. The Alliance. 2. 1969 general election. 3. Federal. 4. State levels. 5. The opposition parties. 6. Kuala Lumpur. 7. The police. 8. Malay settlement. 9. Kampung Baru. 10. Non-Malay. And 11. May 13. A quick reference to dictionaries, thesaurus, encyclopedias, as well as other related resources accessible through online would be very helpful. To get a closer understanding of each word of a phrase, learners should also be able to identify the related discipline areas. For instance, the terms the Alliance. Quick reference from Wikipedia and some other encyclopedias explains that the Alliance Party or Parti Perikatan was a Malaysian political coalition formally registered on October the 30th, 1957. The membership comprised of the United Malays National Organisation or UMNO, Malay Chinese Association MCA, and Malaysian Indian Congress MIC. It was the ruling coalition of Malaya from 1957 to 1963 and Malaysia from 1963 to 1973. The coalition became the Barisan Nasional in 1973. The related discipline areas are history, political science, leadership, social development, ethnic relation, and others. Viewers are welcome to explore other listed terminologies mentioned previously, and please refer to the discussion in chapter 4 of my book. Step 3. Generate ideas from the facts. The third step is to generate ideas or hypotheses from the facts. At this point, learners should be able to relate their prior knowledge to the facts and propose new ideas to describe their understanding upon the facts. The ideas might be something closely related to the facts or interconnected in some way or another. Ideas or hypothesis generation is a crucial step in the diagnostic process. Learners working in a group engage in higher order thinking activities through discussion, argumentation, and sometimes debates and disputes to come to the conclusion. Prior knowledge and skills are crucially important and helpful. Based on the facts identified above, we could generate as many as ideas or hypotheses to expand our understanding upon the problem. For instance, for fact 1, the Alliance won the 1969 general election with a reduced number of seats both at federal and state levels. The ideas could be 1. The 1969 general election must be among the most historic elections in the country. 2. The Alliance must have performed better in previous elections. 3. This time they performed poorly. 4. For Alliance, something must be wrong with this result. And viewers are welcome to list some more ideas from each fact identified previously. Please refer to the discussion in chapter 4 of my book. Step 4. Generate learning issues. A better understanding of the connection between facts and ideas will be useful for the next step. That is the essential process of inquiry to generate the learning issues. Each idea should trigger the learners to keep questioning on what they need to learn further. Learners should learn how to ask a good question or question related to each idea. A good question will lead to proper learning issues related to the problem triggers. At this point in the inquiry process, learners should be able to identify the knowledge gap between what they already knew or known, what they did not know, unknown, and what they should learn further, which is the learning issues. Learning issues comprise of the multidisciplinary nature of the problem. It is well known to us that every problem in the world is naturally multifaceted and made of various interconnected questions and require a multidisciplinary solution. Constant questioning using the Socratic method will be very helpful. The question will direct the learners to the learning issues. They should continuously ponder upon the question to arrive at the intended learning issues. For instance, these are among the learning issues that could be generated from fact 1 and ideas listed. Fact 1. The Alliance won the 1969 general election with a reduced number of seats, both at federal and state levels. Idea 1. The 1969 general election must be among the most historic elections in the country. The learning issues generated are 1. When was the 1969 general election? 2. How many parties contested? 3. How many seats contested? 4. What is the overall result? Idea 2. The Alliance must have performed better in previous election. The learning issues generated are 1. What parties that made up of Alliance? Who are the leaders? 2. How the Alliance was established. 3. When it was established. 4. Where it was established. 5. How was the performance of the Alliance in the previous elections? Idea 3. This time they performed poorly. The learning issues generated 1. How was the performance of the Alliance in numbers? 2. Who are the winners and the losers? 3. How was the performance of each candidate? Idea 4. For Alliance, something must be wrong with this result. The learning issues generated: why do you think the Alliance performed poorly? 2. Why is Mahathir lost? 3. What are the internal and external factors for this poor performance? 4. Who should be blamed over this poor performance? 5. How to improve the situation? Viewers are welcome to generate more learning issues from the facts and ideas identified. Please refer to the discussion in chapter 4 of my book. These learning issues are the result of initial diagnostic process. In no way they are complete or comprehensively represent the overall learning issues. They are the list of the problem-based learning experience generated through the piloting process. This process involves the minimum level of estimation to facilitate the learning and meet the assessment requirement. Readers are welcome to work in a group and through a rigorous problem diagnosis, generate better ideas and more appropriate learning issues. 2 heads certainly are better than 1. Step 5. Plan for self-directed learning or action plan. Having identified and listed the learning issues, learners should be able to plan for their self-directed learning exploration. The process of planning for self-directed learning exploration called action plan. Action plan is a final step in the diagnostic phase. The success of the PBL process very much depends on the readiness of the learners to explore the question posed in the learning issues. In-depth investigation upon the learning issues through rigorous debates and argumentation will strengthen the knowledge acquisition and develop a new perspective upon the issue. At the highest level of learning outcomes, the learner might be able to create a new body of knowledge. In a PBL context, the self-directed learning phase is very crucial. Apart from strengthening the knowledge acquisition and developing a new perspective upon the issue, it will also lead to problem solving and decision making, another level of independent self-directed learning. This phase is where the authenticity of the learning transpires. Lessons learned from this phase will also greatly contribute towards lifelong learning skills. Before the learners embark into the self-directed learning exploration, they should ask two questions. One, what to learn and how. The first question requires the learners to identify the topics and discipline areas related to the result of the learners. The second question requires the learners to identify available resources and the most appropriate way to access and master them. To answer the question what the learners should refer to the list of terms and learning issues identified through the Factila diagnosis. Each term, as well as the question posed in the learning issues, is pointing towards specific topics and discipline areas. From there on, the learners should be able to identify and prioritize them. The priority will be a guiding list for the learners to embark into a proper self-directed learning. To answer the question how, the learners should consider the learning opportunities they could enjoy, such as the duration of the learning, facilities and infrastructure, technological as well as human and financial resource supports. Understanding these aspects enable the learners to decide on the appropriate learning modes for the self-directed learning exploration.